I'm Nancy Akerly from Liberty Grove Paper Arts in Sister Bay, Wisconsin. I'm a paper artist who loves doing cartonnage as well as bookbinding, paper marbling, and basically, origami certainly, but anything to do with paper. I recently came across a really wonderful design for a box. I call it the Squash Blossom box. And it was a little Japanese design that I ran across a few years ago and couldn't figure out how to make. And then I got some significant clues from an online friend of mine named Bep van Gesteren from the Netherlands. So it looks like this. It has all triangles on the side. It has a square bottom and a square top. And I think it is just as cute as it can be. I've made several different sizes. This is one of my favorites, as is this. It can be a really charming little box. I can only believe that any treat that comes in a box this special would be truly wonderful. I'd like to show you what supplies you're going to need and materials and paper and board and things like that, and then what tools you'll need as well. So let's get started. In terms of tools that you'll need some kind of cutting mat, often just a magazine or something that you can cut into without worries about ruining it. I use an 18-inch ruler. It has a non-slip backing. At times I use a little corner triangle just to make sure that I have a 90-degree angle on my board especially. I use a cutter, the kind where you can snap off the ends so you keep it straight. You keep it really nice and sharp, because the sharper your cutting tool is, the less chance there is for injury. And I use mechanical pencil because it always stays nice and sharp. I have scissors. Scissors, of course, is an essential tool in almost all paper arts. A bone folder. I have PVA glue and a glue brush. I have a little bit of sandpaper. And then I have some small weights. And those are pretty much all the tools that you'll need. Not a lot, but just some very basic things will help you make a beautiful box. And then I always have a little box or something handy, a little bag or a box to put paper scraps in, because they tend to accumulate and then get in the way as you're working. I also use deli paper. I put that down when I'm going to be gluing, so the whole surface doesn't get all gluey and your beautiful box doesn't get all full of glue. A few more thoughts about different tools, about weights. I do use these small diving weights, which are very handy. I also have some larger diving weights, and then I also have the pure lead diving weights, which are really handy also to use. But I also have these 1, 2, 3 blocks. They're for tooling metal. And they're called 1, 2, 3 blocks because they're 1 inch by 2 inches by 3 inches long. And they're very, very sturdy. And they're also magnetic, which provides some interesting possibilities. But these come in very handy, even if you're just going to be squaring a corner, in a box, and put that in the corner until it dries. I also use some rocks at some time. Generally, I'll wrap those in some kind of brown paper. And then this was my original weight that I used, an old flat iron of my grandma's. So the kinds of things you can use for weights varies greatly, And basically it's using whatever works. And about another really good tool. This is a tool from Colorway Arts. Claudia Schio is the gal who developed it. She also has some other really interesting tools that involve measurement. Here are some of her other tools. This one is just, these are all different sizes that you can lay down and use them as spacers. But this one's especially nice. This serves the same function as this little corner tool. So if you have a piece of paper and you're going to need to cover something, you just put this around whatever board you have and then draw your line there. And that's where you need to cut so you can miter your corners. Now, she very cleverly did this as well. This is 3/4 of an inch wide, so you can use that for measuring things pretty easily. But you also, you see this little triangle there? You also can put that down like this, square on that corner, and also draw a line there. So this is a combination 3/4 inch measure and the corner tool as well. These both come in so handy. And then I mentioned this square tool and then didn't really need to use it at all for this project. But when I'm cutting board, this comes in so handy because you can just place it and be sure that you have a 90-degree angle in the corner, because often as you're trying to construct boxes, that becomes a real problem if you don't have a 90-degree angle. For example, this is, can you see? This is just a little off. So I'll know that if I want this corner to be square, and I do, then I should just trim off this little extra bit here. Very handy tool to have as well. I also mentioned sandpaper, which we didn't have to use, but sometimes you want to just make the corners a little bit rounded, or you want to, or things aren't fitting quite right, like when you put the little friction held piece on the inside of a box. So we've got a box like this, and what we've got here is a little friction held insert that holds that top in place. And sometimes before you wrap it, you'll want to measure that and make sure that it fits in that place. And then if not, you can always sand down the corners and help it to fit. Another way to fix, if this little piece here, this little inset piece that holds the top through friction, does not fit, if it's a little bit too large, there are a couple of things you can do. You could cut it down and rewrap it, or you can take your bone folder and just do a little finessing, round the corners, and then try and round the edges a little bit too. Sometimes that's all you need to get a good fit. And then we'll go fit inside of there just smooth as can be. Then in terms of actual supplies and materials, you need a 6-inch square. This is medium chipboard. You could also use bookboard. Either one will work. And 2 7/8 inch squares, 2 3.5 inch squares, and then you need a piece of decorative paper for the inside of your box. So let me show you. The inside of your box here can be different than the outside. It can be the same as well, but you'll need about a 6.5, a little bit larger than 6-inch square for the inside. And then for the outside, you're going to need a piece that's going to be 2.5 inches by 14 inches. And that's for the inside and the outside of this. And from there on, you're going to be making some decisions. There are these little friction locking pieces and that's why you're cutting these two pieces. And you can decide which paper you want those out of. You can decide this large one is for the top, and then I'm going to have you cut out another one for the bottom, because you could easily put something on the bottom. You could make it square, or you could put it off center. So all you need beyond that amount of paper are some generous scraps of paper, and we'll decide what to do and how we want to decorate it later after we get going. So that's it. Pretty easy start, and I'll show you what to do next. We're going to start with that 6-inch square of chipboard. I'm just going to do some measuring. That's something that's unusual about this box. We do more measuring and marking at the very beginning than we do for almost any other box that I make, but it pays off. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is, my ruler is 1.5 inches wide. This is a 6-inch square. I want a 3-inch bottom. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring 1.5 inches from each edge, and then I'm drawing a line. It's very handy that my ruler happens to be 1.5 inches, but you could just as easily measure 1.5 and draw your line that way as well. Well, a good ruler is just essential for any kind of paper arts work. But if there's any way to not use the ruler and not have to measure, I'm right there. All right, so we got this. Now we're going to measure and mark the halfway point on each of the sides, which is 3 inches. And then we're going to take the ruler and connect those midpoints. And the nice thing is it will also go through this intersection right here, if we've measured correctly, which I believe we have. Now I'm making my lines very dark so you can see them. You don't need to make yours as dark. You just need to make them so you can see them easily yourself as you're working. This part I find actually to be kind of fun. You're making this cool geometric pattern. And we're not quite done yet. All right, so we have this, and then we need to make 4 more small lines. I'm going to put this on the diagonal, and then in this square, I'm going to draw a diagonal, and in this square, I'm going to draw a diagonal. I choose not to draw it in the middle. The same thing going the other way diagonally. All right, then I'm going to ask you to kind of color out triangle there, and the triangle there, and then the triangles right across from those two. I'm just going to shade them in. and then I'm going to cut out those triangles. Now, the really nice thing about chipboard is you can use your knife, or you can cut the scissors. And sometimes, you know, the tip gets a little caught. You just have to persevere. I don't usually have a use for these. Sometimes I'll use it for some of the decorations up on top. I'll cover it with paper. Sometimes I'll use it on the bottom. You know, maybe get another one and put it there. So I wouldn't throw them away. I would just keep them in your scrap box. So we have that one cut out. Now we're going to cut out this one. All right. The next thing I want you to do is to just take your pencil, and do you see these lines here that bisect these triangles on the ends? Just cross out those bisecting lines just on the triangle part, because we're done with those. You could also just erase them. That's just to remind me that I'm not going to score on those lines. I'm going to just score on the other lines that are on here. Okay. So I'm going to start out by scoring. A scoring line is generally a line that you make previous to folding, and that's exactly what we're doing. I'm going to be doing some folding on these lines in very short order. So I did all the center ones. Now I'm going to do this triangular shape on opposite ends. I'm not trying to cut through. Matter of fact, we don't want to cut through. I see that I maybe should trim this one a little bit more. It looks like I left things I shouldn't have left. Okay. So then we're going to fold, and you don't fold up on those lines you just made, you fold back like this. So we'll fold like that, and like that, and like that. Because you can see now how it's going to come together. Once we cover the inside and do a little gluing, it's going to be this really cool shape of triangles. So the next thing that we want to do is glue the inside paper on. And the reason it's going to be a little bit larger than that is we're going to glue it down on that paper, on the wrong side of the paper, of course, and then we're going to cut around it. So that's a pretty easy thing to do. We'll just get our glue and our glue brush. I think cartonnage and bookbinding are both very kind of calming and zen activities to do. Other than not wanting your glue to dry before you get everything glued to it that you need, you really can just take your time. All right, I think I'm going to try and go to 2 sides so I don't have a whole lot to cut there. And I'll just turn it over and smooth it, getting out any extra glue, making sure everything is down nice and solid. Oh, yikes. I just remembered the other thing that you might need is a painter's tape, kind of tape that'll peel right off of whatever surface it's on when you're done using it. I'll show you that in a little bit. And I would not even cut it to fit until it's dry. So I'm just going to let this dry for a few minutes, put a few weights on it, and we'll be back in just a minute. So we've given this a little while to dry, and now we can just take either our knife or our scissors and trim the paper to fit the shape of the box, which doesn't take but a minute. Okay, put all these scraps in my little scrap box. And now we'll just, again, crease on those folds and smooth out the creases with your bone folder. Okay, and there's the box. That really pretty Japanese chiogami paper inside. Then I will take my painter's tape. Actually, regular Scotch tape would work just as well. And I cut it in 2 long strips, 2 narrow strips. And I put the strip there and there. And there. But before I'm going to put the strip on this side, I'll show you my intent. I'm going to just dab glue right where those sides will meet on all pieces. And then I'll put the blue tape parallel to the top. And I'll pull them all in. So they're like that. And then I will let that dry. So I'm going to go over to the other side. I just wanted to show you how it all fit together before I did anything. And I'm going to put glue on these touching sides as well. Okay, so again, we shape them. So they are as you want them to be. And then put the blue tape around that. And we'll give that about 5 minutes to dry. And while we're doing that, we can go ahead and cover some of the pieces for the top. So we'll just let this dry. Okay. So here are the 2 3.5 by 3.5 squares and the 2 2 7/8 by 2 7/8 squares. Well, I'm going to use this adorable paper for the outside. And I've got just a little bit of really orange paper that might look really good with that. So I'm thinking about using that. But the top, I think I'm going to just, this top part, I think I'm just going to make out of the white. So that means I will cut a piece of paper about the size of this, just a little bit larger. Now even this out. I usually go, I don't know, this is probably about 3/4 of an inch, between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch larger than the piece that I'm going to cover. And then what I'm going to do next is cut off corners, but I'm going to use Claudia Scios's really nice Colorway Arts corner tool. And you can either just cut or you can mark and cut. So you don't want to cut a diagonal right next to there if we're going to make it look nice, because it might get too close to the corner and not cover the corner. So you always want it to be a little ways away. And usually I'll say it's you take whatever board you're using and you can go like this and then draw your line. It should be at least 2 boards width away. This will work too. So you don't need Claudia's tool, but it's often nice to have. You can use 2 board thicknesses instead. And then, after you glue the 2 opposite sides, you just take your bone folder and push in that corner. And do the same thing on all 4 corners. And then, when you glue in the other side, you're going to end up with a nicely mitered corner. And I usually round the corners a tiny bit. All right, that's good for the cover. It's going to look just like that. All right, now let's glue these 2 pieces together because they're going to be the little friction lock on the inside. We'll let that dry for a minute. I'll show you what I mean. Inside of there, it's friction that holds this down, or friction that holds that down. Oops, didn't see that. Friction that holds that down. It's a little friction lock piece. And that, I do believe I'm going to make out of the fish paper. But first I'm going to cover this other piece because this is the piece that's going to go on the bottom underneath here. So let's cut that to fit next. And we'll glue this one just the way we did the other one. I usually like to go just a little bit around the corner. Okay, and then as soon as we finish this one, then we'll go ahead and glue the little friction lock pieces. And they're pretty simple as well. But there's something different that we do with this. We take these friction lock pieces and make sure that they fit inside of the box. That would be bad if we got that far and it didn't fit. Well, there are ways we can ameliorate that. We can help it, but if we don't have to, that's even better. It's getting pretty gluey. I'm just going to fold that up. And then I tap the corners and square the sides. All right. And that's going to get glued on the inside of whichever one of these is going to be the top. We can do that right now. And then we'll come back and cover the outside of the box. We're moving right along. Not going to be a whole lot longer until we're finished. So center it the best you can and put a weight on it and let it dry. We'll be back in a minute to finish wrapping the box. All right. Those parts are still drying and this should be pretty well stuck together. Let's take this off and see. Yeah, looks like it is. Wonderful. All right. Matter of fact, we could even take this and put the top on right now, just to be sure that it fits. Lovely. All right. So, the first thing we want to do is take our ruler and about 1/4 of an inch from the edge, we want to draw a line. And that line is going to enable us to keep things straight on here. Now we have that little line, and we're going to take glue and put it on half of one of the sides that line the top of the box, and then one of the bottom triangles. And we're going to take this and line it up where we put half the glue right there and line up the top. And then you just take this part and press it down on that bottom section and then turn it over, and we do another top and a bottom. And it goes right even with that line on the top of the box, and then go down there. And glue on the top and glue on the bottom. Right along that line. On the top, glue it on the bottom. And we do another on the top, glue it on the bottom. And once again, go right along that line. And that right there. And now we're back to the beginning, and you can take this and just we'll fold it back and then trim that piece. And put a little glue right there. And we'll turn it over on the bottom and kind of pinch these corners and just cut off the tips of the corners. And take those little pieces and put them in the scrap box. And then it's just a matter of putting glue on those bottom pieces and folding them over. You might want to take a smaller scissors. We're going to go to each one of these corners and cut a little triangle. And then carefully put glue on the side and fold it over. And we could take let's see. I'm going to glue this one square as opposed to cattywampus. You know, you have an option. I made a bottom piece for this to be glued onto. On this piece, though, I just covered the bottom with more paper. So on here, I think all I want to do is just put that down. And then we need to make some decisions about what we want to put on here. And I'll get a little more chipboard and we'll finish this off. And I'll show you how to put the little ribbon in the top. All right. It's a really good idea while your box is drying to put the top on, because then it's going to dry into that square shape of that little friction lock that you put in there. And that's a very good thing. So while that's drying, we'll put this on top of there. I made some executive decisions about what I'm going to put on the very top. And I'm going to put, let's see, a larger shape like this out of this orange color. And then I'm going to have little fish up on top. And then I'm going to get some ribbon. So let's go ahead and finish covering these. Oh, it's so exciting. We're almost done. I like the way it's looking. I mean, isn't that half the fun? Seeing how the different papers and the different colors that you've chosen work together. You know, and sometimes you get to this point and you say, well, that didn't work. And then you add something, you add a little bead, or you add a button, or you add something wonderful that will just pull the whole thing together. You know, I'm going to show you how to do this little ribbon, but you can also put beads on top and they look pretty darn cute also. So after a while you get, so you can just cut it diagonally and you're far enough away without using any tool or without taking 2 widths of the chipboard. Well, that's not good, but that's okay. It'll still work. Okay, I'll get rid of these scraps. Get them out of our way. And then it really is just a matter of going around the corners just a little bit. And then taking your bone folder and pushing in from the sides. And gluing the 2 remaining sides. I do like these little fish. They're so cute. Okay. Here. And there. And then we push these sides in. square the sides. And put that like that. And that, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe I'll put that like that. I'll put that like that. Kind of like that too. That's kind of like one step too many. Okay, I like it like that. Okay, so I will glue down a little orange square. Okay, and I'll let that go. And oh, I found a beautiful orange. I think this will work just great. It's pretty narrow, but I still think it'll be fine. We don't need much. What we want to do is take this and put it end to end like that. And then I'll use a pen so you can see it better. Right in the middle, you know, we can make a diagonal so we can find the middle. Okay, well that's pretty darn close. Right in the middle, we want a little cut about that size. See, I was looking from this side. Okay, this is good. We'll push it through and cut off some of this excess. And we'll take two ends. This is obviously way too long, but that's okay. Right now, it's just fine. And there it is. Isn't that going to be just great? All right, so then what I'll do is I'll turn this over and cut off the excess ribbon. And glue down the ends. And just leaves that cute little loop up there. And I'll put a bit of glue on this final top notch piece. I mean, it's kind of busy. but I do like the way it looks. Before you really use it too much, you will want to just let it dry. You know, I would put a little weight on either side of the ribbon and just let it sit for probably a day. And then clean off my brush and put away my tools. And you're done. Well, I hope you enjoy this little box as much as I have. I think they're really adorable, and making the smaller sized one, I'll include the measurements for the smaller sized ones as well. I think they're absolutely charming. And I don't think anybody could guess how it's made. You know, I saw directions for one where they actually cut all the triangles and glued them all together. But, oh, impossible. I don't want to do that. I think this is a nice compromise. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.